Before we do reassemble the drum, it's a good time to pitch check your shell. There are some drummers who believe in tuning a drum to the pitch of the shell. In other words, the drum shell has a pitch to it. And if you tune that drum, the heads on the drum, to the pitch of the shell, you're going to get the best sound out of that drum. This drum, I believe, is around an E. I've pitch checked it before, and I'll show you how I do that. But in other words, though, with the shell ringing an E, if I tune my heads to an E, I'm going to get the best sound out of this drum. That's the theory of the pitch, shell pitch tuning. Not everybody subscribes to that. So for what it's worth, it's a theory that's out there. It's worth considering. What I suggest is you pitch the shell. Now that you have everything off of it, take a pencil and on the inside of the shell, lightly mark the pitch of the shell. Then you'll always know that. And if you ever want to explore shell pitch tuning, you can. And you'll have that option open. So here, I have my shell. Here's how I'm going to pitch check it. I'm going to hold it in the air, suspended on one finger. I'm trying to make as little contact as possible with that shell so that the shell vibrates. And I'm going to tap it and try to get a pitch out of that. I believe I'm hearing that. My tuner is telling me E is the note I'm singing. That's the note I'm tapping and hearing. And that's what I have written on the inside of this already. So on my phone here, I have a Chromatic Tuner. It's all that is. It's an app, free app. So I know, hey, my shell's an E. Let me go inside of that, and somewhere I'm going to write where I can see lightly. Again, I'm just going to write the letter E. There's my muffler. So I'll put it above the tone hole. So I wrote E, shell pitch. There I have it. I now know the shell pitch of this drum for tuning purposes later. All right, let's reassemble the drum. First thing I want to do is put the lug casings back on, and that's just a reverse process of taking them off. There is no order. They're all the same. So the way you took them off, it doesn't necessarily have to go on the same way. And I will caution, if you truly have a rare vintage drum that came out of your grandfather's attic that's never been taken apart, and you know that it's in its original state, then I wouldn't even take that drum apart, because that drum is possibly worth a lot of money in its original state. When you start disassembling something like that, you run the risk of devaluing it. So don't do that. I know all of my drums have been taken apart, and none of my drums are worth that much money. Some of my drums are worth a little bit of money, but not so much that I have to worry about what order the lugs came off. So if you were going to take apart a drum and you were concerned about putting it back together in the order that it came off so that it stays in its original state, then yes, you should mark each lug as you take it off, going back now, and put it on the drum in the same way, same place it was from when you took it off. For me, I don't need to do that. These are going back on wherever they just happen to go, and it doesn't matter. They're all the same. The holes are all drilled the same. It's going to look the same. It's going to sound the same. So I'll start out here where you can see. That one's going to go there. Then I'm going to reach inside my drum. Remember, I have all my little bolts in there. Haven't lost them. They're still sitting there. And I'm going to finger tighten the top one. And then I'm going to put the second one in and finger tighten that one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do all 6 of those. And remember, if you have a drum with 6 lug casings on the top and 6 on the bottom, then you have 12 to do. I only have 6 to do because these are double-sided casings. I was pretty smart there, right? I kind of knew in this video I'd save a little time for myself. So there it is. It's on finger tight now. You can see it's a little loose, but that's okay. I'll tighten it with my socket when I get them all on. Stay with me. I'll be right back, and when I come back, I'll have all 6 on the drum for you. All right, I'm in my drum here, putting back together the lug casings, putting them back on the drum. I last left you, I was on the first one. I've got all 6 on. I actually went ahead and tightened 5 of them. What I normally do is I finger tighten all of them. I get them all on and finger tighten them. And then I go back around with either my socket or my screwdriver, depending on what each one takes. And you would know that from disassembling it. You should remember that. Keep that tool handy. And then I go back around and I snug them down. Be a little bit careful here. You don't want to make them so tight that you strip them. The metal on these lug casings isn't super strong, and I have stripped some. And if you strip a lug casing, then you have to buy a new lug casing. If you have a newer drum, that's not too big of a deal. If you have an old vintage drum like this, that's a big deal. You're going to wind up on eBay trying to find parts for this, and that can be expensive and difficult. So just get them snug. And that'll bring me to another point. Anytime I change a drum head on a drum, if I have time, of course, if I'm in a pinch and I'm really in a hurry, I just change a drum head as quick as I can and get moving to whatever I have to do. But if I have an extra 5 minutes, I always reach for a screwdriver or a socket and snug these up inside a drum. I was just in a studio session last week, put a new head on a Tomtom, and before I put the new head on, grabbed a screwdriver, went through, and a bunch of them were starting to get loose, and I snugged them up. What will happen is if you don't keep those snugged up, eventually they'll work their way free, loose, they'll fall out, and then they'll sit in the drum, and then when you hit that drum, they'll bounce around in there, which isn't going to ruin anything or hurt anything, but it's just obviously going to sound bad. Your drum's going to have a screw bouncing around in it, and then you'll have to take it apart and fix it. So why bother, right? You might as well, as you're changing heads, do regular maintenance and make sure these are always snug. Takes you an extra 5 minutes, no big deal. So on that one, I just had to go a little bit to get that one snug. All my lug casings are on. They're all snug. I'm ready to go. You can see what I got here. Next thing I need to do is put my Tomtom Mount on and my muffler. Doesn't matter what order you do it in. You just have to put those on. But let me give you a warning here. Be very careful. Depending on how the drum shell was drilled, there will be an obvious top and bottom head. On this particular drum, here are the drill holes for the muffler. Clearly that's for the top head up here. You really have no choice but to put the muffler there, so it's not going to matter to know the top or bottom head. But some drum companies may have tom mounting brackets that are designed to go one way or the other, and they may be interchangeable. So I have to think about this drum, knowing that that's the top. I have to think about my Tomtom bracket that's going to go here, like that. And if this is the top of my drum, as I'm looking at it, look where my screw is for my Tomtom bracket. Well, I can ask myself, do I want that screw on the inside, or do I want that upside down and on the outside? And that's really a matter of preference. But I know that this drum will sit here in front of me when I play like this, so I probably want this wing nut on the inside so that if I'm playing and it starts to loosen, I can just reach forward and grab it and tighten it. If I have to reach around, that might be a little more difficult, especially if it's in the middle of a song and it's an emergency and I need to fix that. So again, just something before you put it together, make sure things are facing the right way and they are as they need to be, so that just saving you work here so that you don't have to go back, take it apart, and fix it and redo it again. All right, I'll be right back in a second. I'll put that on, and I'll put the muffler on. When you put your muffler on, again, just redo what you undid when you took it apart. If you put parts in an orderly way on your table, you should have no trouble figuring out how it all goes back together. If you're new to this, when you take a drum apart, videotape yourself doing it so you can watch that video and get back to it. I'll be right back. All right, everything is back together on my drum. I have my lug casings on. I have my muffler back on. I have my tom mounting bracket back on. As you can see, all the parts are on. I snugged everything up on the inside. You can see everything. Here's your muffler.